Common question from both investigative clients and even vehicle clients is what determines the transfer of an asset and how is a bill of sale related to that? And here's a really good article from LegalZoom. And again, LegalZoom and even this video is not intended to be legal advice like you'd get from an attorney, but to give you some good information about what a bill of sale can be used for. And even in the subtitle, it says proof you sold an item or proof you bought an item. It doesn't necessarily convey ownership because anybody can really write up a bill of sale. It doesn't necessarily prove they owned it. It just proves a transaction happened at a certain date and a certain time and who the people are. So it says it's a legal document that records the transfer of ownership, which may or may not be true because in most states, when it comes to a vehicle, a bill of sale isn't sufficient to prove ownership because ownership only goes with the title, right? It's to record the sale of something more than it is transfer of ownership. It's a very subtle difference, but it does mean different things. Transfer of ownership is only done by what legal process that requires. With a piece of real estate, it's a deed. With a vehicle, it's a title. Other things such as animals or furniture, maybe a bill of sale might be sufficient, but not with all items. It protects both buyer and seller should disagreements arise in the future, which is kind of true, but it could also be disputed if somebody else actually owned the thing. When should you use it? Proof of purchase, if it's required. What has to be on a bill of sale? These are the key elements to make sure of. One of the most commonly overlooked elements we see on vehicle bill of sale documents all the time is the date. Most people forget to put the date that it happened. That's important because sometimes the date is what triggers things like sales tax or triggers how fast you have to register a vehicle or how fast you have to put something into your name. Make sure it has a date on it. Name and address of buyer and seller. Certainly the name, address in some cases is not as important, but the names of the parties is important. What the amount paid is. If it was a gift, you can put gift. If it was a trade for something else, you can put that, but you have to put the amount of the what's called the consideration for that. What's the description of the assets, right? If you just put trailer for a vehicle, that may not be enough. You may need a VIN number or a year, make, and model. If you just put Ford Mustang, you may have to put 1993 Ford Mustang convertible, color red, and the VIN number. You want to have as detailed of a description as possible. If it is, let's say, inventory, you may want to put how many boxes of light fixtures are there and what brand they are. Instead of being generic or vague, you want to put a detail. If you need more legal representations, and this is something you want to get advice from, you may want to put a guarantee that the item is free from other claims or liens, right? If you're a buyer, you want to have the seller at least represent that. It may not guarantee that there are no liens, but at least the buyer is claiming that there are no liens. Are there any other representations? Do they guarantee that the thing's in working order? Is it for parts only? If it's a horse, is the horse sick? Are they up to date on all their veterinary appointments? So any other representations that were discussed as part of that conversation, you want to make sure that they're documented if they're important enough for you to rely upon. If you're the seller, maybe you have a representation that the person is going to remove the item within a certain period of time. If you're the seller, you might want to put a notation that if the payment doesn't go through, that the bill of sale is void. You want to get good legal advice on what representations are important. However, either way, if there's something that was discussed verbally or even in a text message or email that's important representation that you're relying on as a buyer and seller, you want that on the bill of sale. Signatures of both people, at least of the seller, are important. And the reason for doing this is, again, not to give you legal advice like an attorney, but as an investigative agency, we see many, many times where evidence needs to be discovered about a transaction that happened in the past, where information is missing from a bill of sale, or a bill of sale was never done for that matter. And if you have that bill of sale, you have the evidence documented, and if you need to get more information, the private investigator can use that bill of sale to track down more details. Starting with the name of the other party, they can track down who it is. If there's a description of the assets, they can track down maybe where the assets came from or who might be other owners. Most cases, a bill of sale can be handwritten. Vehicle bill of sale requirements in most states or it can be handwritten as long as it's legible. It doesn't have to be typed or on a certain form. Signatures are important. Sometimes it has to be notarized depending on the nature of the asset being conveyed. Vehicle bill of sale talks about here, year, make, and model. Some states require odometer reading. Sometimes an engine serial number is required, usually not. If it's as is, or if it has a warranty, that's something people will put on there. One thing to be aware of is on vehicles, if you put for parts only, even if it's something where the seller wants to put it just so there's no warranty, that might be a problem in getting a title. Some states don't title vehicles that are for parts only. So if you're buying a vehicle and the seller says, look, I'm not giving you any warranty, it's as is, that's fine. As is, no warranty is okay. If the seller puts down parts only is different than as is. Parts only is a legal determination that some states do not allow titles for. So make sure that you understand that. And it says here, download template. You'll find dozens of templates and basic forms for a bill of sale that you can use. And in most cases, a generic form is perfectly sufficient. You may not need anything formal. If you're doing a vehicle transfer, it might be good to get the official bill of sale template from that state. Some states have a form you can use. Even if it's not required, if you use that state's form, it might make it easier for you to get a title and registration afterwards.